Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction, created purely for entertainment purposes on the channel Golden Story Time. Names, characters, places, and incidents are the product of the creator's imagination. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The story is meant to spread love, emotions, and positivity, not to hurt anyone's feelings or beliefs. Welcome to Golden Story Time, where every heartbeat tells a tale. Today's story is about love that never faded, even when time tried to erase it. A story called ... Letters of the Past. Scene 1. The Forgotten Box. On a quiet evening, Ayesha cleaned her late grandmother's old house. Amid dusty shelves, she found a small wooden box, locked, fragile, and tied with a red ribbon. Inside were dozens of yellowed letters, addressed to someone named Arman. Ayesha's heart skipped a beat. Who was Arman? And why were these letters never sent? Curious, Ayesha unfolded the first letter. It read, "Dear Arman, every time you smiled, it felt like sunrise after years of darkness. Tay never worked in our favor." Ears filled Ayesha's eyes. Zoya, her grandmother, had loved a man deeply, but silently. Scene 3. The truth behind the letters. Day after day, Ayesha read the letters, each revealing a new piece of Zoya's heart. Arman was a soldier. He had gone to war. They promised to marry after he returned. But one letter ended abruptly. Voice of Zoya, they say your regiment was lost in battle. I refuse to believe it, because love never dies so easily. After that, no more letters were written. Scene 4. The Twist of Fate. Ayesha couldn't stop thinking about the name Arman. So, she searched old records, visited the town archives, and asked the neighbors. And there, she found a name on a gravestone. Armaan, menos 1943. Beside it, a note etched by hand for Zoya, who kept her promise a Sharilas. Her grandmother had found him. Years later, she buried the letters beside his grave and never spoke of it again. Scene 5. Full circle ending. As the sun set, Ayesha placed the letters back in the box, but added one of her own. Ayesha's voice softly. Dear Nana, your love story taught me that some souls meet not just once, but in every lifetime. Rest together forever. Love doesn't end with time. It only waits to be remembered. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Golden Story Time, where every story is made of golden memories. In the quiet hum of a house filled with echoes, I found a piece of my grandmother I never knew. My name is Ayesha, and this story begins on a quiet evening amidst the dust and memories of my late grandmother Zoya's home. I was cleaning, sorting through remnants of a life well lived, when my fingers brushed against a small, forgotten wooden box on a high shelf. It was locked, the wood fragile with age, and tied with a faded red ribbon that seemed to hold a secret. Curiosity got the better of me. With a gentle click, the old lock gave way, and the scent of aged paper and dried roses filled the air. Inside, nestled in velvet, were dozens of yellowed letters, their ink faint, but their words pulsing with a life of their own. My dearest Arman. The first one began in a delicate script I recognized as my grandmother's. But this wasn't the grandmother I knew, the quiet, reserved woman who smelled of cinnamon and always had a gentle smile. This was Zoya, a young woman brimming with a love so profound it seemed to leap off the page. Each letter was a window into her soul, a chronicle of a love that blossomed in whispered promises and stolen glances. She wrote about the way Armand's eyes crinkled when he smiled, the sound of his laughter that she called her favorite song, and their shared dreams of a future painted with sunsets and a small house by the sea. I sat there, on the dusty floor, for hours, transported back in time. I felt the thrill of their first meeting at a village fair, the warmth of their hands intertwined under a starlit sky, and the ache of their goodbyes. The letters painted a picture of a vibrant, passionate love, a connection so deep it felt almost sacred. Zoya's words were filled with hope and longing, detailing everyday moments that became extraordinary simply because they were shared with him. She described the color of the scarf he'd given her, how she'd wear it every day just to feel close to him. It was a love story, more beautiful than any I had ever read, and it was my own grandmother's. But then, the tone of the letters began to shift. The joyous anticipation was replaced by annoying anxiety. Armand had gone to war. His letters, once frequent, became sporadic, their cheerful tone strained. Zoya's replies were filled with prayers for his safety, her words a desperate plea to the universe to bring him back to her. "The world feels colorless without you," she wrote. "Please, just come home." The weight of her sorrow pressed down on me as I read on. The final letter from Armand was short, written in haste. He spoke of an impending battle, but his words were brave, full of love and the promise of their reunion. "I carry your love as my shield," he wrote. "Wait for me, my Zoya. I will return." But he never did. The letters from Zoya that followed were addressed to him, but I knew they were never sent. They were a torrent of grief, a conversation with a ghost. She wrote to him for years, telling him about her days, asking for his guidance, and reaffirming her undying. The vibrant young woman from the early letters slowly faded, replaced by a quiet sorrow that settled deep within her heart. My grandmother had carried this immense, unspoken grief her entire life. She had loved and lost so completely, and no one ever knew. The story seemed to end there, a tragic tale of love cut short by fate, a promise broken by the cruelties of war. It explained the quiet sadness I sometimes saw in her eyes, a melancholy I never understood until now. I thought that was the end, a heartbreaking but incomplete chapter. But tucked at the very bottom of the box, beneath the last of Zoya's unsent letters, was a small, folded newspaper clipping. It was dated decades later, long after the war had ended. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. It was a small article from a local paper in a distant town, a human interest story about an old soldier who volunteered at a community garden. The man in the photograph was older, his face lined with the map of a long life, but his eyes were unmistakable. They crinkled at the corners, just as Zoya had described. The name beneath the photo read, Armand. He had survived. My heart pounded in my chest. Why hadn't he returned? The questions swirled in my mind. Did he lose his memory? Was he unable to find her? The article mentioned he had suffered a severe injury and spent years recovering, eventually settling in that small town, never marrying. He had built a new life, but had he forgotten his old one? A new wave of sadness washed over me, this time for him, for the life he could have had, for the two lovers who lived out their lives worlds apart, each believing the other was lost forever. It felt like an even crueler twist of fate. But the story wasn't over. Tucked within the folds of that same newspaper clipping was one last, very different letter. The paper was newer, the ink bold. It wasn't from Zoya or Rahman. It was from a nurse, addressed to my grandmother. Dear Zoya, it began, I am writing to you on behalf of a patient, Mr. Arman. He carried your name in his heart until his final day. He never forgot you. The letter explained that Arman had spent his last weeks in a hospice, and in his final moments of clarity, he had spoken of her, of their love, and of a promise to meet again. He had asked the nurse to find her, to let her know he had loved her until the very end. The postmark on the envelope was dated just a few months before my grandmother passed away. She had known. In her final days, my grandmother learned that her Arman had not only survived the war but had never stopped loving her. He hadn't forgotten. He hadn't abandoned her. Fate had kept them apart, but their love had endured across the decades. The quiet peace I had seen on her face in her last days suddenly made sense. It wasn't just resignation, it was acceptance. It was the peace of a love story, finally finding its conclusion. Their reunion hadn't happened in this life, under a starlit sky as they had planned, but in their final moments, their souls had reconnected across time and distance. This box of letters wasn't just a collection of old papers. It was a testament to a love that transcended time, war, and even death. It taught me that true love doesn't just disappear. It lives on in memories, in whispered words written on yellowed paper, and in the hearts of those who keep the story alive. My grandmother's love story wasn't incomplete. It was eternal. Zoya and Arman proved that some bonds are so strong, not even a lifetime of separation can break them. Their love lives on, a silent, beautiful melody in a quiet old house, and now in my heart too. Thank you for letting me share this deeply personal story with you. It's a reminder that there are incredible stories hidden all around us, in dusty boxers and in the hearts of the people we love. If you were moved by Zoya and Arman's journey, please give this video a like and consider subscribing for more stories that touch the heart. Until next time, hold your loved ones close.